for the gifts that we have to give, and for this community that truly seeks to live out its covenant, that love is the spirit of this church and service is its law. May we be grateful. So this summer in worship at UUI, we are reviewing the 6 sources of what we call our living tradition. And these are the sources of wisdom and energy that both ground our religion, but also uplift it and renew it. So last Sunday we talked about the first source, which is direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder. And today we're talking about our second source, which is, quote, words and deeds of prophetic women and men, which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. So I'll read that again, since it is wordy as always. Words and deeds of prophetic women and men, which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Now, the word prophetic in this case, in the way that UUs use it, doesn't have anything to do with telling the future. It's not that kind of prophecy. When Unitarian Universalists use that language of prophetic voice, it's a reference to the Old Testament prophets, right? The prophets of the Hebrew Scripture, so Isaiah and Elijah, Micah and Ezekiel, the prophets who made it their duty in their own time and their own context to call their people back to justice, to call their people back to the ethical demands of their religion, to call their people back to the loving demands of their religion, and to confront the structures of evil within their own day. And in particular, the prophets were concerned with protecting the people in their time who had been abandoned by their society. So the poor, the imprisoned, the despised, the dispossessed, the prophets spoke out for these people. So by making prophetic words and deeds one of our sources, we're saying that part of what it means to be a UU church as an institution is to offer a critique of society from the standpoint of our 7 principles, and then where possible to organize and to empower forces for change, not just to talk about it, but to do something about it. And so part of what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist is to be a vessel for justice and compassion and the transforming power of love. Part of what it means to be a UU is to stand on the side of the oppressed, to be in solidarity with people whose society has left out, or cast aside. Not just to be in service to them, not to come rescue them, not to tell them how they could be free if only they would listen, but simply to be in solidarity with them, which means to make their pain our pain, and to embrace and step into the statement that I cannot be free until you are free. That is what solidarity means in this context. Now, as it happens, when we talk about prophetic words of women and men, there currently is a proposal in our religion to change the language of our second source a little bit. It's one of the things that we're going to vote on at our annual sort of business meeting, celebration, General Assembly that's coming up in a couple of weeks in New Orleans. We're going to vote on whether to move this proposed language change farther down the path, right? Since we're UUs, we're probably at least 37 committee meetings away from actually making a change. But we're going to vote on kind of easing it on down for further study, reflection, et cetera, et cetera. And the proposal is to change the language from words and deeds of prophetic women and men to words and deeds of prophetic people. Words and deeds of prophetic people. Now, in the main, this is to make space for people who do not identify as male or female according to the standard gender binary. So, for example, people who are transgender, people who are non-binary, indigenous people who identify as two-spirit. And it is important to be inclusive of all people in our language, especially when, for so many people, language has been one of the chief tools by which their humanity has been denied. And language has been the tool by which their identity has been erased, or their very existence even called into question. So words matter, and we recognize that words matter. I also like the change to words and deeds of prophetic people because it reminds me that social change and social progress is often the work of entire communities. Unitarian Universalists, maybe because we're so individualistic, we tend to be enamored of like the great person view of history. We tend to see change as being the result of heroic individuals who kind of step forward with their brilliant thoughts and their striking words and their courage and their bravery. And they appear on the world scene and they like shake things up, and the world is forever changed. And those people exist, and we are grateful to them. But our history tends to become a recitation of these famous names. So we talk about Channing, and we talk about Emerson, and Theodore Parker, and James Reeb, and Gandhi, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and so on. But more often, social change is the collective work of a community, of many, many people who have come together over time, first often just to protect themselves and each other with whatever resources that they have. And then they discover in one another their inherent worth and dignity, their common humanity. And then they begin to celebrate that dignity together, sometimes in secret. And then they begin to insist on that dignity, and they won't be silent about it any longer. And then they forge together an unbreakable pride. And out of that pride, they begin to organize and to do the real hard work of creating change. And organizing change is difficult, and it is often monotonous work. It is not one big action or one big decision or one dramatic moment. It's 1,000 small actions and small decisions sustained over time. It is house meetings and driving people to the polls and stuffing envelopes and staffing battered women's shelters and creating safe spaces for LGBT youth just to have someone to talk to, or providing childcare for striking workers, and then having endless conversations to raise up voices that society does not want to hear, again and again and again. It is the work of a community. And so I like the idea of recognizing that a community too can speak with a prophetic voice. A community of people, often working from the margins of society, can bring forward a vision of a better world and a better future. So yesterday was the close of the Indianapolis Pride Festival, a week-long celebration of LGBT pride, which culminated in the Cadillac Barbie Pride Parade yesterday morning, followed by an entire day of music and food and dancing and shopping at Military Park. And we don't really need to recount the long and dismal history of LGBT rights in this country to appreciate the power and the necessity of this event. Homosexuality was a crime, after all, until fairly recently. And there have been tremendous victories towards equality in the last several years, including the right to marry. But in many places, it is still perfectly legal to discriminate against LGBT people, economically and in other ways. LGBT youth still suffer disproportionately from homelessness and poverty. And of course, transgender people experience severe economic discrimination and very high levels of violence. And 2017 has continued to see a rash of laws proposed at the state level to harass LGBT people or to encourage discrimination against them. So this kind of action is needed. Now, in the popular imagination, the movement for LGBT liberation began with a riot at the Stonewall Inn on June 28, 1969. At that time, homosexuality was illegal, and LGBT culture had to be lived out underground. And gay people in New York City found safe haven in certain nightclubs where they could openly be themselves, but these clubs were subject to constant harassment by the police and frequent raids. And so on June 28th, the police raid at the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village kicked off a riot in which LGBT people in and outside the club resisted mass arrest by pelting the police with garbage. And this was followed by a week of agitation in the streets with hundreds of people clashing with the police night after night. So Stonewall was not a political act per se. It was more like a spontaneous explosion of anger by people who were sick of being pushed around and driven into hiding. It was one of the most visible instances of LGBT resistance to their oppression. To be clear, that resistance had existed beforehand in a variety of ways. But Stonewall nonetheless became a powerful symbol for LGBT liberation. And it inspired 1,000 political acts. It inspired people to organize and advocate, to build those communities and do that hard, persistent work. Gay rights groups appeared in every major city around the country. And within the Unitarian Universalist Association, a gay concerns group was formed. And within 15 years, we would have ordained our first openly gay minister who would serve at a congregation. And then we would become known as the welcoming community in our religious work. But that all came out of people doing the long, slow, patient work of activism. So a year after Stonewall, on the first anniversary, the first Pride parades were held. And as with all things, it took significantly longer for these trends to reach our fair Indiana. According to the history of Indy Pride given on their website, it was 1981 was when the first Pride event happened in Indiana. It was not a parade, it was a dinner at the Essex House Hotel, and people actually had to wear masks to protect their identities entering the hotel so that they would not be seen. There were no safe gay bars or places in Indiana for the LGBT community to find one another or to exist. The first really visible public event was a Pride celebration on the Circle in 1990 that drew 3,000 people, which made it the largest public gay event in Indiana at the time. And although public celebrations were held annually from then on, the Pride Parade itself did not appear in Indianapolis until 2005. And it was a very small affair. It was like a truck, a few floats, and a handful of walking groups. So if you made it downtown yesterday, compare what you experienced to a pickup truck, a few floats, and a handful of walking groups. And I know that UUI must have been a participant in this almost from the very beginning, because our family joined the church in 2006. And one of the first things that we did was march with our community in the Pride Parade, which was a great honor. And we didn't know anything about the history of it at that time. So today the Pride Parade is one of the largest in the city in the terms of the number of floats and the number of attendees. And the Pride Festival attracts over 300 vendors and like 80,000 celebrants. So its growth as an Indianapolis institution has been astoundingly successful. It's astoundingly successful, and it all came out of that patient, persistent community work. And today, UUI marches in the parade with All Souls and Heartland and Oak Landon and Sacred Path. All of the area UU churches come together, a testament to our shared commitment to uphold in the public square the value of freedom for all. Because for Unitarian Universalism, the freedom to be the authentic self is a core part of our religious philosophy. This is expressive of more than just the needs of wants of any one individual person. Our particular approach to the care and feeding of the human spirit expresses a larger vision of the human good. It is true that I myself want to be free, and so as a Unitarian Universalist, I appreciate a religion that guards my freedom. But also we want each other to be free. We want all people to be free. And that is because as humanists, we are all in with the human spirit. As a religion, we are all in with the power of the human spirit. We believe great things happen when people are allowed to unlock and unleash their full potential. And repression and conformity are the enemies of this full flowering of the self. How much human genius, how much love and laughter and kindness and creativity that could have been brought into the world to be shared has been buried instead underneath the weight of fear and intolerance for so long. How much needless pain and cruelty and violence has been brought into the world by fear and intolerance for so long. So the Pride Festival is a powerful prophetic witness. A prophetic witness. All these people rising up, rejecting ideologies of shame and fear, claiming their unbreakable pride, and insisting on being their own authentic selves in a very public and visible way, as if to say, we will not hide one more day. And they are having a blast doing it. Because the Pride Festival is like crazy fun, right? It's not an angry political act, it's a joyous event. Pure joy everywhere, accompanied by beer and meat on a stick and like pounding music and vibrant color, and there's art everywhere. And there's all of these bodies on display in all of these different varieties without shame, and there's dancing and laughter and smiling and hugging and hand-holding. To meet hate and ugliness and intolerance with joy and with dance and with color and laughter is a powerful, prophetic form of protest. As the poet said, you have brought your fists to a glitter fight. And the implication is clear. In the end, love will win and joy will win and glitter will win. So Eliza Chavez is not, as far as I know, a UU, but her faith is also our faith. Because we believe in the power of the liberated human spirit to make the world a better place. We believe it is natural to be in love with life, to be in love with the earth, and to be in love with one another. And that doesn't mean that we don't experience sorrow or pain or fear or loss. But it means that fundamentally we are oriented towards this life with gratitude. Fundamentally, we are oriented towards life with gratitude. And so on this day, on the culmination of Pride Week, I am feeling grateful, deeply grateful, to all of the heroes, known and unknown, sung and unsung, to the entire community of heroes who have risked so much fighting for LGBT liberation. I am feeling grateful to the people who have unlocked so many chains from our culture, who have opened so many hearts and freed so many minds, often at such cost, facing prison, poverty, scorn, violence, but doing the work, the patient, persistent, brave, heartbreaking work of opening other people's hearts and minds. I am feeling grateful to the people who continue to fight for legal protection, for equality, for justice. I am feeling grateful to the people who have changed the world by daring to be who they are without apology or explanation and without shame. I am grateful for their prophetic voice, and I am grateful for their unbreakable pride. So as Unitarian Universalists, as a religious people who celebrate human freedom, let us give thanks to all those who, in daring to be free, have helped teach us what it means to be free. And may we work to create a community that holds all people in love and care, that recognizes the worth of all people, and that draws us together powerfully to love life, to love ourselves, and to love one another. Blessed be, and amen.